Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for how to launch a B2B SaaS startup. And this is part of a series of events we've been doing the last couple months, really just focused on SaaS and best practices, particularly around revenue side motions. However, today we wanted to kind of expand the gamut of topics and kind of cover some key points when you're trying to launch your startup and scale it. Not everything, but some of the core things we could fit into one night here. I'm super excited to introduce two of my friends. So I'm always lucky to say that I get to work with and collaborate with some of the smartest people in the world and who happen to be friends as well. So I'm gonna pass it along to Danielle. Let's just kind of go around and introduce ourselves to the audience.
Awesome. Thanks, George. So hi, everyone. I know I can't see you, but I feel your presence. I'm a partner at WVV Ventures. We are an early stage fund here in the Bay Area, and we're kind of a corporate VC hybrid model in which our money comes from corporates, but we're looking to invest in companies that we can then connect into our LPs if it makes sense. But prior to that, and how I know Jorge is, I built and ran the premier B2B accelerator called Alchemist for the last 7 years. And in that role, I worked with and invested in over 400 B2B startups, and one of them being his company. So really excited to be part of the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. Kira, good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be here. So I'm a principal at B Partners, and we're a San Francisco-based pre-seed venture firm. We love looking at deals from Alchemist. We focus on a lot of hands-on partnership and helping our teams at the very early stage find their product market fit. We have a concentrated approach, so invest in maybe 6, 7, 8 companies a year. And we as a firm have a worldview that machines will win at things like precision and complexity and speed, and that humans will still own and purpose and ingenuity and instinct. And what that boils down to on a more tangible level is that we look at a lot of frontier or deep tech companies with an enterprise focus. And for me personally, I've spent a lot of time with synthetic biology and robotics, and so excited to be here and talk about teams and founders and all of the journey.
Awesome. Well, we're going to kick it off. For everyone out there, just a couple things. If you have any questions, go ahead and click on Ask a Question. There should be a button down here. And if you don't want to do that, you can go ahead and post it in the chat as well. The only downside of the chat is if it gets crazy, we lose the chat there, or the question, I should say. But this session is really focused on what are some of the best practices around building and maintaining a strong founding team? It is my experience that most startups will fail because they had a weak or a disjointed or maybe a team that didn't get along long term. And team is really everything. Kira, in your experience, what would you say if you think about sort of let's start off with maybe qualitative attributes that your co-founder should have?
Yeah, I would start with, this might seem obvious, but there's actually a difference amongst founders of just, do they have an uncanny passion for what they're doing? And a way I would frame this is, are they, there's a way to say, are they mercenary founders or the person you're partnering with? Is this somebody who's kind of excited for some quick returns and a financially viable journey? Or is it more of someone on the missionary journey where they're going to be solving this problem and wanting to build a solution like the one you guys are developing, no matter what? So I think passion, I think a long-term interest in what you guys are doing just really, will lay the foundation for the partnership, but also really shines through for investors. That's one of the top kind of soft skills we're looking for.
And Danielle, when you think about this question, are there any particular attributes? If I went to a networking session, and I was looking for those characteristics. First of all, what would you say those things are, and then how do I find those things?
Yeah, those are great questions and hard ones to answer. I think it comes down to knowing what your strengths and your weaknesses are and finding someone else who equally complements you in those areas, right? We call that kind of a well-rounded team. And it's definitely something a lot of investors are looking for. And beyond that, you also want to be finding someone that you have probably worked with in the past, right? That you might have had conflicts come up with and you've gotten through them. I would say, what we tend to see as red flags sometimes is, did you just meet this person a few months ago? You guys haven't actually struggled through anything. These are all big kind of team questions, right? That you're going to have to get through. And it's going to be hard for you to convince someone to give you money if you don't even, you guys haven't worked through any kind of struggle. So, definitely, I wouldn't know exactly what to call those things, but there's also a level of grit that and endurance that your co-founders need to have, right? Along with yourself, right? I think this is a kind of spiritual journey in a way, right? Like you need to know within your soul that this is what you were meant to do, and you need to find someone else who believes in it as much as you do.
That really resonates with me when you talk about the spiritual journey, because I always sort of thought to myself that entrepreneurship and being a founder is kind of like a rite of passage in many ways, or being in a monastery or some sort of intense practice. Kira, if you were to think about let's talk about some quantitative, and this kind of segues into or overlaps with my next question, which is those quantitative elements, and what are those key roles if you got to put together a founding team to build a SaaS business or B2B business, let's just say, right? What are those particular roles that you're really looking to fill early on?
Yeah. Well, starting with the founding team, I think across the founders, we're looking for resource magnets. And the top 3 priorities in my book are, can you find you're asked about what roles, but starting from a little bit higher level, are you a resource magnet for talent and the employees that you want to hire? And so, because, for example, the founders, the sales, VP of sales until closer to the Series A, the roles specifics is one question, but I think we're looking, you as a co-founder, can the two of you, or is the yin to the yang, as maybe Danielle was saying, of getting balanced out, if that's not your expertise, is your co-founder going to bring that? I would say the same thing around capital raising, and whether it's, can either of you all, storytelling, do you have investor relationships? Do you just have know-how and strategy on fundraising because you've done it before? So I think one of you two needs that quality. And then I would say something similar around customers, right? And again, this is 2 founders or 3, if that's all you were starting with. I would be focusing on these 3 things. And so, are they deep in the industry, or are they just rolled out, B2B sales and just know all that strategy? So, that's where I would focus.
Do they have to be super technical in your opinion? I mean, we're talking about, SaaS technology.
Yeah. Not entirely. For example, we had one of our B2B SaaS companies, it's a marketplace, and there's a SaaS workflow tool baked into it. And the CTO is really a product manager with some tech chops and knows how, though, to manage his technical team really well and read the code. And so he can not be quite as technical, but still effectively lead and manage. And I think when you go on the more technical side of things, like I mentioned, we look at frontier tech, well, then you certainly need a CTO who is through and through, the technologist. But I think it's a little different for B2B SaaS. I'm curious, maybe Danielle sees it similarly or differently.
Yeah, what do you think, Danielle? What have you seen? And I know you've seen from 0 all the way up.
I think it depends on what you're building, and understanding where that differentiation is going to come from. Sometimes your differentiator is just an execution play. You need to just do it better and faster than other people in the market, right? And that might not necessarily be a technical challenge, right? It just might be that you're adding some sort of optimization, right? I would say that for some other, SaaS plays, tech is going to be important. And, now that, and we believe in the world, the future of AI, I believe B does as well, right? That, that is going to be kind of the way of the future in automating a lot of these workflows, making us more efficient. So if in that regard, technology is important, to the extent that it needs to be really deep, really, research-based kind of technology, maybe not so much all the time. But I do think, having some sort of technical person on the team who knows, how to speak that language and kind of optimize what the business people are trying to do, again, kind of creates that well-rounded team atmosphere.
Got it. And are there any particular roles that are just kind of like must have? And the reason why I ask is, I guess when I got into technology about, 19 years ago or so, and particularly like the Web 2.0 thing was about 2004, 2005. The first thing I was told was, you can't code, go and find an engineer to go and hack up an MVP for you, or and partner on a sweat equity, or you partner and do that whole deal. And if you don't have a technical person on your team, then forget it. To your point, the world has really changed, right? I mean, we don't even have to code websites anymore. If you do, it's kind of bizarre, right? And so, are there any particular, Danielle, roles that you're just like, if I don't see at least that there, like I just won't do it? And I think SaaS is certainly different than consumer.
Of course, I had a cough right when you asked me a question.
That, by the way, that happens to me all the time. I was on a call the other day, and I was literally trying to talk to this prospect, and I just couldn't. I had to cancel. I had to be like, look, and the guy was freaking out. He's like, "What's going on? Are you okay?" But anyway.
I'm sorry. I don't look at it in terms of titles, in terms of what titles you have on the team. It's definitely more of a skill set, right? What skill sets do you need? And again, what kind of company are you trying to build? And then what skill sets do you have on that founding team in order to make that a reality, like from, to get it off the ground? Or if you know what you don't have, how are you kind of supplementing that with like advisors and, coaching and whatnot?
Awesome. Kira, and I know you're seeing, companies that are not quite at the accelerator level, but, pre-seed, seed-ish kind of roles there. What would you say from your experience, where would the best founders come from? Danielle mentioned it a little earlier. Is it colleagues? Is it friends, meetups? Where would you find those?
Yeah, I thought about this question, and again, people ask me this a lot, and I think universities are a good starting point. We're really well connected to Berkeley, and they have various programs that are about early stage innovators trying to find their co-founder, narrowing in on the right idea, then going through Lean Launchpad type training. There's groups like On Deck that is pretty similar. They're basically helping folks find co-founders and explore ideas. So you're really looking for these idea stage incubation hubs. I know YC has this future founder school. So I hate to say it. It's like, and Danielle spoke to this as well. It's someone you've been in the trenches with before, and you kind of know them really well and through and have had a working relationship. But if that's not the case, I would think of this like founder dating. And then I actually kind of think founders with VCs is another form of dating. But anyhow, I think you really want to get to know these people, whoever you may bump into, have some type of working relationship, couple months where you really understand each other well before committing to that type of partnership. And I'll say that having seen some shotgun founder weddings, it's the ones I've seen have ended in disaster. So, and so like, forget the investor point of view. I mean, you don't want your company to implode, right? So yeah, be really cautious there.
Mads asks if I don't have a friend or a past coworker, who can I make my co-founder? And Mads, this is essentially what we're talking about now. It's really interesting. I think from my perspective, I have gone through different phases in my career, and I think that one of the biggest attributes is for me that I'm now looking for. Well, right now I'm just an early employee, so I'm taking a break from the founder thing for a little bit. However, one of the things that I think was super important is this person wanting to do a startup? And this kind of sounds silly, but I've run into it so many times. I'd love to get your opinion on this. Is this person, and even myself, is the intention just to do a startup because I don't want to go and get a job somewhere and have a boss or something, right? Or am I really, really passionate, committed, and do I really understand this pain point? I remember back in 2010, 2011, people were getting checks for like Uber for everything, right? Or, this for this. And, and I didn't really get the sense that these founders that I was talking to or meeting were truly just would die for that pain point. They lived and breathed that pain point, right? And for me, I was doing a sales tech thing at the time, and I was just really passionate about sales for still to this day. And so my question is how do you agree that it's like there's you got to make sure that this individual that you're going to partner with is not just in it for the fame or fashion, because we know that that's far from the truth, right? And if so, how do I actually tease that out to learn? Danielle, have you run into this, and what would you say I look for?
Yeah, well, I would say that it's not one or the other. You just need to find someone where your interests are aligned. Because some people, they want to get in and get out quickly, right? Like they like to build things and kind of sell. And if you find someone else that is equally minded, then, it's not a bad fit. What's a bad fit is when you're like, no, I want to do this. Like, this is my life's work. I'm going to do this for 10 years. And the other person is like, no, I get bored really quickly. I think I've got like 2 years in me and then I want to sell, right? Or understanding what type of builder, or are they more of a steady state kind of, 9 to 5 kind of person, right? Understanding how they work, in which environments they work best in. All of these things. And again, if you know the person over a longer period of time, these questions you might already have answers to, but for someone you're just meeting, you really want to take this hiring process very seriously, right? Like and I call it a hiring process because you would ask these questions if you were bringing someone on, but this is someone that you're effectively going to be married to, and you really haven't had those hard conversations with. And this is why a lot of these disasters happen, because all of a sudden we're working in the trenches. Things are getting really hard. You're starting to struggle. Maybe your money's getting tight. Your family's time is suffering, and all of a sudden all this stress, it's like a boiler, a pot of hot water, like ready to explode. And all of a sudden this question of equity comes up and you're like, we never wrote anything down. Actually, like we might've mentioned 5%, but now I want, 30%, all of this stuff. And now all we have are these problems coming out, right? Because people are just in this pressurized situation. And so it's really good to have these conversations early on in the process. Do a trial period, and for both of your sakes, right? Have a trial period. I've been, at least for 3 to 6 months, where, you're just seeing how you guys work together. And some of these things will come out, especially in a startup environment. Like these things are happening rather fast. So the issues may come out much sooner than if you were working at a traditional company.
I love that. Kira, what's your take on this?
Yeah, well, the way you were framing the question was sort of the way I was talking about a mercenary versus missionary founder. So, I mean, I'm biased, but I think you want the missionary who's in it for the long haul. And, the teams we bet on are looking out at that 10-year horizon and thinking of it as a marriage to that co-founder and basically to us as well. If there's the quick exit in mind, I guess that's just a different path. And it, like Danielle was saying, if that's your path, maybe that does fit. But I would argue, in terms of the fame and fortune, I mean, there are blood, sweat, and tears. And at your seed stage, you've got, I looked at some numbers recently, and it's like 2% chance of succeeding and having that unicorn type exit. And then you get to the Series A and you're maybe at 17%. And then you get to Series B and you're at 56%. And the point is, certainly the odds go up, but it's a really long journey. And anyhow, so I think, I do think there is some startup founder DNA, and sussing that out. One little tip is, we like to see our founders, one, we go slower on diligence than the average seed investor. So maybe the average is 1 month and we're about 2 months. And then we like to see people in and outside of a boardroom. So for example, like, I'm a yoga teacher for fun on the side, and I'm like, let's catch a yoga class. Or my boss will take them to like a greasy diner in the Mission, whatever it is, but you're trying to get to know like the totality of somebody, right? And even like, do they have young children, and do they want to be is 9 to 5 a better fit for a while? Male and female alike, right? So just sussing those out in very human ways.
Yeah. Would you ever invest in a single founder, like one person founding team?
We have rules that are made to be broken. That's venture for you. But yeah, we've invested in some single founders. But Danielle was making a really nice point of, well, you're just the co-founder or the team you're building around you, or your advisors, or even your investors. You're just trying to fill in the gaps on skill set that and are explaining to whoever, your customers, your investors, that this is what we need to succeed. So, it's even for a deep tech team, we invested in a CEO where, she's an engineer by trade, but she's not building the core technology and it's biosensors. So, there's a lot to be said. And that goes back to some of what I was saying on resource magnetism and just filling in these gaps.
And then Danielle, within the vein of resource magnetism, from a venture perspective, when someone walks in the room and starts to communicate, and you have those 1, 2, or 3 founders, maybe more. If they have 6, I always get nervous. But what are you looking for? How do you sort of externally start to say, oh, maybe they would be a resource magnet?
Yeah. So at Alchemist, we used to do interviews in 15 minutes and make decisions. Now, being on the VC side of that changes. And also, since everything is virtual, you aren't oftentimes seeing like the whole co-founding team like on one call out the gate. But from Alchemist, you just sit back and kind of watch this interaction go on. And this is kind of what I would do on our panels. I call them like these meta, I don't know, just body language type things. It's things you can't really describe. You know it when you see it, but what I would look for is who's speaking and who's speaking, who wants to speak, who's taking the, like the forward, approach, right? Who's sitting in the back? Are they comfortable giving one or the other the spotlight, talking over each other the whole time? Like, there are these things where you can kind of read conflict in the making, right? Like, are they able to get, have, and then these things come up about like, well, do they both think they're the CEO? That's probably not going to work out, right? So I was able to see this in a pretty quick, again, pressurized environment in these interviews. And, oftentimes that would be kind of my decision-making gate. Like, do I think that this team actually is going to make it, right? beyond just whether I believed in the business or not, right? And you can, for most companies, I would challenge that it's team over idea, right? If you have a great team, but a great team, but in a bad idea, you can probably still make it work. But you can't really make a bad team make a great idea work. They're probably going to fall apart before it even gets off the ground.
Couldn't agree more. I would just chime in too that team is everything. It's over 50% of the bet, I think, at the early stage. And then tag on to what Danielle was saying, where if you're in the right market, you've got so much room to pivot and turn and still have success. So hopefully in the ballpark sense, you're in the right market too.
Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Definitely.
I know we're coming up here on time. If folks want to, maybe we'll start off with you, Danielle. First of all, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're super busy here, and we do this for free. Basically, everyone that is involved here is volunteering, and I don't monetize this stuff. I've been doing this stuff for years. I'm lucky I have that opportunity to do that. But if folks want to follow you on social media or learn more about your fund, maybe if they meet the criteria, send something over. What are the best channels to reach you?
Yeah, definitely. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a note there. And, kind of do a quick blurb. What we look for are connections to our LPs. So if you feel a selling point into any of the 4 LPs, Northwestern Mutual, Advocate, Aurora Health, Johnson Controls, and Foxconn, connect with me and shoot me a note.
Awesome. Kira, how about yourself? If folks want to, I know you create a lot of content. What's the best way to get in touch with you, and what's kind of the criteria if there are any founders out there that meet that criteria?
Yeah. So feel free to find me on LinkedIn, shoot me a message, or you can do the same on Twitter. And we're just looking for founders at the earliest stage. So haven't raised an institutional round. It probably feels like more of a friends and family round. And you have some big, hairy, audacious goals, something wild and crazy, and you want to talk, even if it's not the perfect fit for me, I'd be happy to. So yeah, shoot me a message.
Awesome. Well, for everyone else out there, we're going to end up moving over to the next session. So you're going to be teleported in there pretty quickly. And so we'll see you there in a couple minutes. And again, thank you so much to our panelists today. Hope to see you both soon in person. I'll come out to the Bay Area hopefully this year. So thanks again and have a great day, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, George.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.